Everywhere you look in the UAE, there's construction. Barely a day goes by without a new development or a new skyscraper being announced. And then there's the infrastructure projects. Just think of it. There's Etihad Rail, there's the new Blue Line on the Dubai Metro, there's the new airport that's going up in Dubai. And underneath us all, there's the new drainage network. Really, the pace is relentless. And now Dubai has announced another massive budgetary cycle, investing literally billions in infrastructure. And with that, we can all see that the momentum is going to increase. Here at the Big Five Construction Conference, analysts say the Gulf remains one of the few regions where building activity is still accelerating, even as it slows down elsewhere. But with over $2.3 trillion in active projects across the UAE and Saudi Arabia, the GCC region is heavily exposed to the cost of raw materials. Gordon Roger, who's the founder of the construction consultancy Stonehaven, warns that pressure on prices is intensifying.
There's a huge demand at the moment in Saudi for these giga projects. There's huge demand here. UAE and Saudi, Qatar all have explosive growth at the moment. That is pushing prices up. When you take it as a full benchmark of all the different costs, it's about 3 to 5% going up this year. But there's big swings on certain materials. So things like copper and aluminium in the last 6 months have gone up about 22%, which is significant on facades, MEP equipment. That is being driven really by other industries such as EV, solar, which are driving the prices up, especially in China.
Stonehaven's latest report suggests the cost of construction is expected to surge over the next 18 months as key materials like steel, concrete and aluminium become more expensive to source. Hospitality, infrastructure and residential sectors are among those most exposed. And against that backdrop, Dubai's just outlined more than 300 billion dirhams of spending between 2026 and 2028. Now, that's its largest financial plan to date. Infrastructure is going to account for roughly half, including transport, utilities, renewables, and civic projects. For contractors, it's a major pipeline of work, but it's adding pressure to capacity. Chris Seymour is Managing Director for the Middle East and Africa at Mace.
But certainly for 26, we're seeing more rising costs, and really it feels like 27, particularly if these plans materialise, we are seeing in 27 the same thing happening there as well. If there is transparency of pipeline, then the supply chain builds. And that's one of the things that we have seen the UAE take a massive step forward. The announcement about the infrastructure programme is just that. It's creating transparency in the market so the supply chain can then adjust, it can grow larger to accept this greater capacity. And that is a sign of a much more maturing market, rather than, for example, governments and developers just releasing projects without any visibility of the pipeline. It's very difficult for the supply chain to react. So ultimately, it actually solves both problems. Visibility and transparency of pipeline helps the government because they'll probably get better pricing because it encourages the market to flex and actually increase capacity to accept those projects.
Contractors say they're already feeling the heat. Fewer firms are bidding for major tenders, and specialist teams, particularly digital engineers and mechanical, electrical and plumbing staff, are commanding higher wages. Here's Gordon Roger again.
25-30% of any construction project is manpower. There's a squeeze in manpower, which not a lot of people are talking about. So because there's so much volume of work, Middle East, Saudi, Qatar, UAE, there's a reduced amount of manpower, and we all have our cost of living, which is going up. So manpower is going up, which is driving prices up.
The good news is that despite rising costs, demand remains strong across both residential and commercial projects. But nevertheless, the impact is being felt by developers who've also seen land prices in Dubai jump by 200 to 300% since 2020. Taimur Khan from JLL says developers are adapting.
We have seen some slippages because of rising costs and developers having to really sort of measure how they bring their stock onto the market. It's something that the market has always faced. And today, a lot of developers are looking to address that challenge by looking at a broader range of market participants, but also in some cases bringing those construction elements in-house. Now, of course, when those assets are sold, and buyers are waiting for delivery. That makes it more challenging when you have surprises in the market. So some of the tariff issues that we face, supply chain shocks, that can be more challenging. So being able to sort of rely on effective planning and looking into the future will allow you to pass some of those costs on. But in a market which is buoyant as this, it is a bit easier to do so.
With so many infrastructure projects planned over the next 3 years, analysts expect demand to stay high and capacity constraints to persist. So what's the likely knock-on effect of these rising costs? Here's Gordon Roger, the founder of Stonehaven again.
It depends on the industry and the niche of where you are. So if you look at the ultra prime developers, ultra prime residential's gone up about 150% in 5 years. Construction costs have not gone up 150%. If you look at other developers who are at the lower end, more cost-effective sales prices, they are going to feel the pinch because their market is the lower part of the market, and they're getting squeezed with the prices coming up by 3 to 5%. So it really depends on the industry you're in. When it comes to things like heavy infrastructure, airports, things like that, they're just going to pass that on to the end user.
The UAE's commitment to develop its infrastructure is going to be a real boon for the economy, and obviously the construction industry is going to benefit from that. But with costs rising, someone somewhere down the value chain is going to have to end up paying, and with budgets stretching into the billions, that surplus could really be felt in the future.